We are glad to greet you here at this round table, Beyond Distance, How Art Residencies Are Migrating Online. My name is Anastasia Patsey, and I represent St. Petersburg Art Residence, which exists starting from 2020 to 2012 on the basis of the Art Center Pushkinskaya 10. And as many art residents, starting from March this year, we cannot implement our international projects, and we are looking for new formats and research new possibilities. And also, we are researching these limitations that we now have as new opportunities. So due to the limitations which were imposed in April, we created our online art residence, which was named #virtual SPAR, and we are inviting the artists from all over the world, and we are happy to see the development of this program. And within this online program, we also decided to have this round table, and we invited the experts in art residence topic to discuss the most crucial issues. What are the possibilities which we have with virtual programs and online programs, and what are the possible scenarios for the development of our future, and is there a positive scenario as well? I would like to briefly introduce the participants of today's discussion, and when I will introduce you, please turn on your sound and say hi to all of us. It is still not easy to orientate in this virtual world, so it will be great to see your faces against your names. Also, we have a special guest today, that is Eliza Roberts, who is joining us from Australia. Eliza, you can say hi to all of us. Thank you. Eliza is Executive Director of the Worldwide Network of Arts Residents, Artis, and she is involved in strategic development and external relationships. She has an extended experience of working in Artis. She was a member of the board and also was occupying the position of Vice President. And previously she worked in international organizations, both local as well as global, such as Christie's, ArtsLink, and so on. And our next speaker is Lizaveta Matveeva. She is connecting to our discussion from St. Petersburg. Elizabeth, hi. She is a curator and researcher and works with topics of creative spaces, incubators, self-organized initiatives, art residencies, and participational engagement initiatives as well. And today, Elizaveta is here as a project manager of CEC ArtsLink Back Apartment Residence Program. And also she is involved in many other projects. Today we have only 2 hours for this discussion. So if I start to read out all the projects where Elizaveta is involved, it will take all this time or even more. So she is a very active participant of our sector. So next speaker is Kristina Gorlanova. She is from Yekaterinburg. Ekaterina is an artist and a curator and the head of the Ural branch of the Pushkin State Art Museum. And also she is a director of the program of art residencies, New Stories of Yekaterinburg. Previously, Ekaterina was the head of House of Metenkov.
Программы арт-резиденции «Новые истории Екатеринбурга». Также с нами сегодня Адель Ким. Адель.
Привет.
Привет. Очень рада, что ты сегодня здесь. Куратор, менеджер, исследователь и одна из организаторов, член оргкомитета Ассоциации арт-резиденций России. Я думаю, что Адель сегодня еще пару слов об этой организации расскажет, очень важный, мне кажется.
About this from Adel, I think this is a very important step in the development of Russian art residencies. Currently, Adel occupies position of the manager of the Tretyakov Gallery. She works with various institutions and she used to be the head of the art residence in Vladivostok named Zarya. So I would like to say that the second season of our virtual residencies is organized with the support of Germany and also the German Center Goethe-Insitut and other partners. And I would like to invite the director of the Goethe-Insitut, Dr. Günther Hasenkamp, to give a greeting statement. Mr. Hasenkamp, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you will forgive me if I switch to English because it's a bit easier for me. And as Anastasia was saying, I'm working with the Goethe-Insitut in St. Petersburg. And the Goethe-Insitut is also part of the local UNIC cluster, which is like a congregation of the European General Consulates and cultural institutions, of which there are 14 here in St. Petersburg. Thank you very much for the opportunity to welcome you. I'd briefly like to mention three things. One is the notion of residency. The other one is virtual residencies. And the third one is digital exhibitions or presentations. Residencies. When we speak about residencies, what we do is we make a fundamental distinction between two types of residencies. One being like direct artist support. Yeah, so you organize a residency, and then you have artists who either, I don't know, write a book or script a movie or develop something. So that's like maybe the traditional idea of a residency or retreat, as it is sometimes rightly called, I believe. But when we, as a cultural institute, talk about residencies, we very often look into a different version, so to speak, which is a residency as a transnational networking activity with an aim to enhance international cultural cooperation. So here we basically talk about groups of people who gather for a certain time, form something like a temporary community. And this is actually what we did with Anastasia Patsey and her team a year ago when we had a program which was called Dialogue 19. Yes, and you can see we even have a printed documentation of it. The title is a bit not so interesting, maybe, because and that has a reason actually. When I handed in the application for getting the funds to do that program, I did not believe that we could get it, so I just called it Dialogue 19 because it was in 2019. We were planning to do this in this year, but for obvious reasons, everything was disrupted and there was no way to do that. But we plan to do it next year as well. Now, in 2019, it was a group of 10 people of various fields of the arts, so like writers and curators, photographers, and so on. One musician. And they were in St. Petersburg for a stretch of 6 weeks. And what we saw thereafter was that certain collaborative activity did in fact happen, like an exhibition, like a book publication, and other things as well. So when we talk about residencies, from our point of view, it was residencies as a networking activity. Now this year, that's number 2 now, virtual residencies. Anastasia introduced to me the term virtual residency, which I had never heard of, but that was part of our activities earlier this year in spring and early summer. I guess all of us were looking into ways of continuing what we are doing by different means. And this is actually why I put into the chat the link to a 20 minutes movie done by Anastasia at the time, where this notion is a bit explained and developed. And virtual residencies, that is what I learned at the time, do have a methodology, and there's nothing strange about it. So number 3, digital exhibitions. Anastasia and I handed in just 3 or 4 weeks ago an application at the Uni Cluster Fund in Brussels to do a virtual residency program next year, which is supposed to end in a digital exhibition. And what, again, I learned at that stage was, as soon as you talk about virtual residencies, one needs to talk about a particular methodology of doing presentations, of doing exhibitions, or whatever you can call it. And that's a field where I guess all of us will be eager to learn more. I can only speak for myself, so I have no idea how to organize a digital exhibition. I've organized many exhibitions, but when it comes to digital ones, I would need to start anew. And I would like to thank very much Anastasia Patsey and her team for taking up the activity and for her relentless activities in that field. And that's a very good example for all of us. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, I cannot stay with you due to other commitments, but I do wish that you'll be having a good and a fruitful meeting. And it feels good to have a feeling that we are part of a transnational activity, or maybe even a community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hasenkamp. Let me emphasize once again, we are truly grateful for your support and for the support of our German partners, especially in this difficult time during this crisis when multiple resources are not available, because this is our hope. So thank you once again. Thank you for finding time to open our discussion today. So I believe that it is a perfect start for this discussion. So let me give the floor to our next speaker, Ms. Eliza Roberts. She is a guest of honor because I cannot imagine any other organization except for Artis that will have such a tangible effect in this area, such a high reputation and such value for the world of art residences. So for me, Res Artis is a synonym for art residences. And I always think about this great team that puts great effort, and they have been working very intensively this year. They researched a lot about the activity of art residences during this crisis. So it is a privilege for us to welcome Eliza here. Thank you very much for participation. So I would like to give you the floor, and it will be very interesting for all of us to hear about Res Artis experience today. Thank you. I give the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Anastasia, and thank you everyone for joining today and being part of this conversation. I understand this is part of St. Petersburg's curatorial forum, so I hope you're all enjoying the activities of that. So as Anastasia said, my name's Eliza. I'm the Executive Director of Res Artis. I'm in a different time zone altogether. I'm based in Melbourne in Australia. So it's the evening here and a very hot day actually in Melbourne, but we've now got thunderstorms going on above us, so please let me know if there's any technical problems. Res Artis is a 27-year-old network of arts residency centres. We've got over 580 members in over 75 different countries. And really, we're the professional body for the international arts residencies field. So we look to provide capacity building and training and professional development opportunities for the field with the aim of growing the arts residencies landscape, but also creating a quality and sustainable landscape for artists to be part of. We mostly do that through digital learning, but we also hold in-person conferences each year. And here you can see a breakdown of our membership. So as I said, about 580 members currently dotted all over the world, and they range from very tiny grassroots, artist-led organisations, right through to big mega art institutions. So we really aim to be inclusive of the entire spectrum of the field. And as you can see in this context, talking to you in Russia, we've got 63% of our membership based in Europe. Our membership is made up of residency members for the most part. So these are organisations who actually run residency programs. But we also have individual members, so artists, curators, researchers, and associate members too, who are big arts councils, networks, international ministries, these types of groups. And we're actually a value-based network. So we aim to be very inclusive, as I said, and celebrate, the diversity, not only that's on offer around the world, but also within the arts residencies field. There's so many different models of residencies, as we'll be talking about today. But we believe that all of our membership, all of our staff and board should adhere to these shared sets of values. So professionalism, diversity, transparency, and sustainability. There's a lot of benefits, obviously, of being part of our network, but just to outline a couple of points there, a lot of people are looking to grow their programs. They might have reached a point where they wish to expand or change strategy, but also to internationalise their programs beyond a regional level. So that's where we can come in and assist with that. And also as a 27-year-old network and a vetted network, there is a sense of organisations joining us to have that kind of validity and to use our brand to validate their own arts residency programs. In saying that, we also provide great visibility for our members. So we have about 4 million visitors come to our website for free every year. So the entire website is free and publicly accessible for artists. And it's actually a multilingual website, so people can access anywhere in the world. And I just wanted to, I'm sure there's probably artists in the audience here, so just to very briefly give you a rundown of how the website works. If you're looking for arts residency opportunities, I used an example in Russia and using SPA, the St. Petersburg Arts Residency. You can search according to different residency terms. So it could be the country that you want to go to, or the art form that you're working in, or even more detailed search categories like if the residency is wheelchair accessible, or if you're allowed to bring your family on residency with you. You can search according to the thumbnails on the left there down the bottom, or using our interactive visual map. And then this brings up a more detailed rundown of what that arts residency offers. And we include a breakdown of fees and as much detail as possible so that it's very clear for artists who are looking for opportunities. So in the context of this conversation, where we're talking about arts residencies migrating online, I thought it might be interesting to take people back just 1 year ago, actually, at the start of 2019, when we held our Res Artis conference in Kyoto. Because then we were actually talking about the history of the arts residencies field and the way that external factors like climate change and humanitarian crises, even the emergence of new technologies and AI had shaped the arts residencies landscape, and were creating new arts residency models. And we even projected into the future to think about what would come next. And of course, I think it was about 11 months later, the global pandemic hit, and who would have thought that was coming? When COVID-19 did hit, the Res Artis the Res Artis office was very much bombarded by inquiries. So we were being contacted by artists from overseas who were stranded in residency and couldn't get back to their home country. We were being contacted by arts residency centres who were crumbling and were having to close down their doors. And so what we did was create a dedicated COVID-19 section on our website. We've tried to keep it very general because we have a very diverse international audience. But there, I encourage everyone to take a look at some of the frequently asked questions and participate in some of the digital learning, like our webinar series and podcasts, because I find them incredibly useful, and I hope you do too. But today I just wanted to focus on one element of that, which was a survey we conducted in partnership with University College London, UCL. It's a 3-part survey to examine the immediate, medium-term and long-term impact of COVID-19 on the arts residency field internationally. And the first survey we conducted back in May. The second survey will actually open next week, so I might talk to Anastasia and see, it might even be possible for you to send out the link and the details for that next week. And then a third and final survey will be conducted next year. So just to run you through some of our key findings, we had 1,132 responses worldwide. And so 774 of those were coming from artists, 358 from arts organisations. In this first survey, it was predominantly visual arts, so we're looking to expand that out further next time around. But more than half, so 54% of respondents let us know that their planned residencies, or even the residencies that they were currently in, were cancelled or modified or postponed due to COVID-19. And remembering this is only back in May as well, nearly half, 47% of artists said that the cancellation of their residencies had really affected them financially. And I've listed a variety of different ways there, but it's very interesting to compare that with the access to emergency funding support that was recorded. So as you can see, up against 47% who had been financially impacted, only 17% were able to access emergency funding in their region. And our second survey that will go out next week will delve deeper into this and draw some regional comparisons. And here we look at the arts residency organisations' financial impact. So 1 in 10 or 9% of arts residencies had already been forced to close their doors indefinitely back in May. 53% had postponed or modified their programs, and 71% said that they'd lost income from cancelled residency programs. Again, if we compare that to the emergency funding support that was available, 22% were able to access emergency funding support. Oops. So I just wanted to provide you with that data as a way of contextualising the discussion today around virtual residencies. We did ask this question in our May survey, asking what aspects of residencies can take place online. And as you can see, there's varying views there, but actually quite consistent views. The interesting thing is that 30% of respondents said that visual residencies could take place. However, 40% have also indicated that residencies are all about in-person exchange. So we feel that the contradiction in these responses suggests that while virtual residencies can take place and have an absolute role and a pivotal role right now, nothing can replace in-person exchange, but they can be complementary to that in-person exchange. So I just wanted to outline a few case studies from our membership before we open up the discussion. I wanted to also point out that virtual residencies, for those that are new to this concept, and not a new phenomenon, actually. They've been around for a while. I mean, even here in Australia, I think it was 2008 maybe, the first one was developed here, and that was using the computer program Second Life. I'm not sure if anyone remembers that. But here's an example from Academy Schloss Solitude in Stuttgart in Germany. And this program has been around, a web residency program, since 2016. So it's available to artists, but also designers, hackers, researchers, and it is an exclusively online program. They use mostly thematic open calls. So, for example, around spirituality and post-doom were some of their latest, shared through our website. And it's usually for about 4 artists or curators for 4-week-long residencies. And they're very much encouraged to experiment with digital technologies. The outcomes obviously have to be online, but it also specifies that they need to be open source format, shareable, and to consider accessibility. And the residents are awarded €750 each for this opportunity. Academy Schloss Solitude does a lot of amazing digital programming, and so this is just part of other ongoing initiatives such as Digital Solitude, which includes not only the web residencies but also online publishing, online events and workshops. They also have a digital archive which has amazing material, and a very, very active online alumni network and blog. So I'd encourage you all to have a look at their website. And here just a couple of other case studies. So these were taken from our website from open calls for arts residency opportunities. And I think over the past year, especially since COVID-19, I've been keeping an eye on some of the trends that are appearing in the virtual residency realm. So I wanted to share those with you today. These are observations that I've noticed from within our membership. So these virtual residencies are often more thematic and curated. They're more structured, so they often talk about thematic models and break down the number of weeks with guest speakers and mentors and individual consultations and group meetings. So it's very different from that sort of classic time and space residency model. For obvious reasons, some of the recent thematic concerns are around COVID-19. So what is the new normal, for example, and artists are asked to respond to this theme. They're shorter in duration than, I would say, in-person exchanges. So usually around 7 days, up to about 4 weeks, but not much longer. And a smaller fee is provided, obviously, not taking into account in-person travel and accommodation and things like that. So I guess the trend is around US 500 or about €750 average. It sounds very basic, but I just wanted to outline some of the technology that's being used because there are some issues around that. So Wi-Fi, obviously they need access to a computer, tablet, mobile phone, some sort of device where they can use Zoom and WhatsApp, social media platforms. But then in addition to that, of course, they've got their individual artist materials to work with. And the outcomes also appear online. So your speaker from the Goethe-Insitut earlier was talking about online exhibition outcomes. That's very common. Events and projects, and there's some really good examples. I can think of HIAP, for example, Helsinki International Art Program, who did a live streaming event of their open studios and guided people through and accompanied that with interviews with the artists. So almost to finish up, there's some interesting future considerations. Quality of internet connectivity, we think, might actually be an issue. And so in this second survey we're about to put out, we're actually asking both artists and arts organisations about the quality of their internet, because we feel that this might disclude people in some parts of the world. This idea of virtual residencies perhaps being complementary rather than a replacement. We're hoping that the field will commence again once travel starts, hopefully next year. And there's so many amazing developments going on. I think it would be a shame for them to stop completely. I think there's a lot to be said for arts residencies incorporating digital means into their programming alongside the in-person exchange. But I think I'd be in the wrong field if I thought that virtual residencies could fully replace that person-to-person exchange. Technology improvements is something to keep in mind, and who knows, perhaps there's some hackers in residence, or amazing people who could develop special apps for artists in residence to better their virtual experiences. And a good colleague of mine, Jean-Baptiste Joly, who was the former director of Académie Schloss Solitude, who I spoke about earlier, and a honorary board member of Res Artis currently, we were discussing this concept of virtual residencies, and he brought up about the lack of the hosting element. It's very hard to host artists in residence virtually, so how can we incorporate some of those meaningful exchanges in the digital realm? I just wanted to very quickly point out that it's not just virtual residencies that are big right now in the face of COVID-19. There's also other models developing, and I'm sure there'll be more to come next year. But stay at home and studio residencies are very popular, and a lot of funding councils supporting that, as well as a rise in local and regional exchange. A lot of organisations are rethinking the way they do things structurally, so planning to refine their contracts with artists to include clauses around residency cancellations and incorporating insurances to cover events such as COVID-19. And I think about 30% of artists plan to engage with internet activities for the creation of new artworks. So again, it's not just arts residents adapting and using virtual residencies as a means during this pandemic, it's also artists adapting in the same way. If you're interested in continuing this discussion down the track, I just wanted to point out Res Artis is having a conference next year, and we very much hope it will be in person. It's the 8th to the 10th of September, but we will also have virtual participation options. And it's really about this exact theme. So looking at the impact of COVID, the residency models that are developing as a result, with a particular focus on virtual and digital. So we hope you can join us there. And that's really it from me. Thank you. Back to you, Anastasia.
Eliza, большое спасибо за твою очень интересную...
Eliza, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I am quite sure that it was very informative for our guests to find out about this survey, and I also sent a link to our chat. It is a PDF document, so if you have any other questions about this survey, about this project, you can go directly to the Res Artis website, or just follow this link and you will find more details. So Eliza, thank you once again. It was wonderful. And now I would like to invite our other participants to take part in this discussion and ask you to tell shortly about your organizations, about your personal experience in art residences, and also about the impact of the pandemic and about the impact of lockdown on your institutions and on your projects. Could you adapt to new realities? If yes, then how? And maybe you had to refrain from something. Could you please share your experience? Maybe there are volunteers. Adel, Adel, I think you looked at me in some specific way. So please, I invite you to start this. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So let me keep it short. Let me briefly talk about our project. The Association of Arts Residences and us are engaged in the initiative to exchange experiences and to support arts residences. And this is a project that was initiated by the Museum of History in Yekaterinburg, and Kristina assisted us. And our website is a platform that can be used by the association to inform about its projects, to share everybody interested in it, to share the information with everybody who is interested. So initially, it has been an online project, so I cannot say that we had to adapt in any way because of the COVID-19. For that reason, we feel quite free in our activity. As far as we understand, in terms of the situation with arts residences in Russia, we don't have any good information in Russia. And we use platforms like Artis. So I think 4 or 5 Russian organizations are presented in the website of Artis, or 10 to 12 organizations. And in Russia, there are about 40 arts residences. Well, maybe now there are fewer of them because of the COVID-19, but still we see the appearance of new organizations. So we cannot say that the number of residences is dropping. So we have a situation when Russian artists and when their potential partners and organizations cannot find any detailed information about arts residences. And foreign artists also don't have an opportunity about arts residences in Russia. We think that this is a challenge and we have to deal with it. And for that reason, for that purpose, we decided to dedicate the majority of information on our website to provide a catalog of Russian arts residences. Actually, we adapt an experience of Artis. We are looking for different information, and our users, the visitors of website, can use different filters in terms of region, in terms of type of a residency. So the information is very cataloged, and it is systemized. And it is an easy way to inform yourself about arts residences, to keep in contact with their representatives, and so on. And of course, we also would like to keep the visitors of our website informed about what is happening, so that they can increase awareness about the world of art and the world of arts residences. Of course, it is not the first attempt to launch a website like this in Russia. I think it is the second or the third attempt. The first one appeared in the beginning of 2010, and this website was also supported by Artis. But unfortunately, this project was not very successful, so we hope to have more progress, more success. And maybe some of you already saw the previous website that was launched for the first forum of the Association of Arts Residences last year. So now you can find it on the address Metenkov Museum. So if you're interested, I can just send the link to the center to our chat. We use Telegram, we use Facebook, and I have already sent a couple of links, so you can just follow them, subscribe, and stay informed. So I think this is the most important information.
Спасибо большое, Адель.
Thank you. Thank you, Adel.
Ты уже упомянула Кристину.
Well, you have already mentioned Kristina, and she also worked hard to develop this initiative. So I would like to ask Kristina to tell more about this project, and maybe you would like to mention other projects of yours, not only this association. Yes, hi. Thank you so much for the invitation. It is a great pleasure to be here. When you were speaking about this partial lockdown, I felt related because I'm very tired of this closed space. So many apologies for this noise on the background. Yes, I have sent a link to the website that Adel has mentioned. I suggest that you visit it. And we promise to keep you informed about the progress of this project. I think Adel also actually covered all necessary facts and details about this project, so I don't have anything to tell more. I also would like to mention that I'm not just a curator and organizer, but also I am an artist. And we constantly talk about our attempts to increase awareness, to develop the sphere of arts residences, to develop ourselves online and offline, not only as representatives of arts residences, but also as artists. But unfortunately, as artists, we don't have such nice progress in this area. For that reason, we have something to discuss. Before the lockdown, we organized arts residences with one artist from Ural, and everything was very great. So let me shortly tell about this experience. And we thought that this arts residency was like a mentorship program. We met in Zoom to discuss the project of this artist. So it was a type of curator support for this artist. And then later on, when we discussed technical issues, we found technical specialists to develop his installation. Let me show you a brief video about this project. It is a really very short video and I will rewind it, so it will take less than 2 minutes. This is a multimedia installation and it tells about space, bodies, pulsars, stars, and it is a master thesis project of this artist. His name is Andrei, and his project was dedicated to the notion of sonation, so to say, translation of sounds from different objects. I think it is a very beautiful installation, and we demonstrated offline in Yekaterinburg because here in Yekaterinburg we still have an opportunity to welcome a limited number of visitors. So this is how it looked in Vladivostok. This is where this artist comes from. Well, we thought that it looks really great. And we organized online talks and webinars, masterclass, workshops. So we cannot say that it is the same like to have these events in person, but still it works. Then we started thinking about if it worked so well for an artist, and we understood that no, it doesn't. Because an artist doesn't have an opportunity when he presents himself online. What we exactly do, where we spend this funding, and ultimately we cannot support an artist in a financial ways, and it is a bad news. Unfortunately, we cannot support our artists financially. So if we think about it, then all those who wrote that our art residences was postponed or it was cancelled, all these people were worried about the lack of financial support. And to tell the truth, I'm not very informed about this part of arts residencies activities. And we are trying to find solutions to deal with this issue, to support our artists anyway if they're not presented in person in our residences. I hope that you can provide me with some good examples, best practices. I will be very pleased and grateful for them, because this installation, we're talking about it, about something that somehow can be transmitted and broadcasted online, so that our visitors benefit from this. But we also would like our artists to benefit from this online transmission. We would like to make our artists visible. So online presence is good, but it doesn't mean that we don't exist offline. So in this sense, we would like arts residences to help artists migrate online, because we would like to help them, not only to help our public, our visitors, but also to help our artists, so that people come and see the results of their work. So let me stop here. Kristina, I would like to thank you. And I think it is especially great that you put the entire situation from the perspective of an artist. So it is a very valuable comparison of two perspectives, a point of view of an arts residency and a point of view of an artist, and you combine those visions. So let me address this question to Lizaveta Matveeva. She's from St. Petersburg. Liza, could you tell us about your experience? I know that you still were active. All of us have been active. We kept working, but you really organized events for your residents, for your alumni. I know that you have one project dedicated to this aim. So maybe you can share your experience regarding this project or your previous projects. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nastya. It is a great privilege for me to be here. It's such a nice group of people. So I'm very grateful. Yes, let me talk about the organization of ArtsLink. This is an organization that exists for many years. It was founded in New York during the Cold War, and the purpose of this organization was to organize the exchange between the Soviet countries and the Warsaw Pact countries and the US, not only between the artists, but also between art managers, musicians, so everybody who's involved in the arts world. We have an office in St. Petersburg, and it helps developing different projects. In 2015, we established an official arts residency, even though there had been exchanges between us before. But mostly, these were just artists for some single projects. Apart from this residency, we have a festival dedicated to arts. Then we have some specific projects and initiatives that are organized not only in St. Petersburg, but also in the former Soviet countries. In terms of residences, maybe our experience during the COVID-19 is a bit different, because we decided not to transform our residency online, not to migrate online. So we have an option to invite all our residents to participate in our residency, to pursue their residency in 2022. So we decided to take this time during the lockdown and the pandemic to make all our residents familiar with the local St. Petersburg culture, with this community, so that they establish contacts, become familiar with each other. So it really engages and drives their cooperation. We receive here artists and curators from other countries. Mostly these are Americans, because we receive funding for American residents, but we also welcome other participants, other residents from other countries, even though we cannot cover their stay and cover their living here. We assist them with visa issuing, but unfortunately we cannot cover per diem, so they apply for third-party financing. And for an artist, The residency is 1 month long. For a curator, it is up to 2 weeks. And the purpose of this residence is research, first of all. So we don't expect some phenomenal achievements, organization of an exhibition for our participants. No, we encourage them to engage in research activity, to develop their ideas. So we are always very pleased when this residency becomes a basis for their future success. When people get to know each other, think about launching some ideas, then they apply for scholarships, go back to St. Petersburg and engage in some long-term project. There were many examples of this when artists received Fulbright scholarship and came back to St. Petersburg to implement them. So for us, it is very important to encourage collaboration and contact between different representatives of art sphere, between artists and financial bodies or curators. And not to lose time during the quarantine, we decided to organize schedule Zoom meetings for our residents with different participants from different residences. We had already several meetings dedicated to different topics. One of them was dedicated to LGBT stories. We had introduction Zoom meetings about art spheres in St. Petersburg, about organizations that are active in this area in St. Petersburg. So every time we choose one topic, we invite 2 to 3 participants from St. Petersburg. They talk about these projects, they receive some feedback, and all residents residents have this opportunity to communicate, to ask questions, to go into detail, to increase awareness in general. We have multiple projects, not only residences. For that reason, we have been quite active this summer. The initial idea was to organize an offline festival, Art Prospect, but unfortunately, it was not possible. Art Prospect is an international festival for public art. We organize it in different districts of St. Petersburg, and during 4 days, our artists organize some performances, installations, participation projects. These all are temporary projects, and their goal is to encourage locals to communicate with art. But there were so many limitations due to the pandemic, so we could not invite those who we wanted to invite to this festival. For that reason, we decided to organize it both online and offline. So we used the space provided by our partners, Cultural Center Gaza, DECA Gaza, and invite artists to develop their projects there. But some of the participants were not in Russia, they were in Europe, in the US, in Australia. So it was an opportunity for all visitors to visit these items and installations, not only online, but also in person, or they could use our application to visit this festival online as well. Apart from this project, Art Avenue or Art Prospect, we decided to organize an assembly. So during several weeks, we have been organizing a number of discussions and events, and you could also participate there online. If you're interested, you can still participate there because we have recorded it. Our residents also could participate, collaborate, and engage in our activities in this way. So we had a quite rich, abundant public project, public program. So I hope they had quite a rich contact to perceive and to use it for their work. So we decided not to migrate online entirely, because I believe that due to the lack of resources, we don't have this opportunity. So in terms of funding, it is quite complicated. Maybe it's even more complicated when you work offline. Maybe my colleagues will agree. For that reason, we believe that this Zoom format, Zoom introduction, is a great opportunity to prepare people for their visiting. So I think next year, in the coming years, we will continue to work in this format, because very frequently when you work at an arts residency, I realize that artists and curators come here with similar interests, but in different times. So it turns out that you have to invite the same people to meet with those residents. So maybe it's a better idea to organize these visits, not to ask these local representatives to waste their time. So we can just make them meet online, make them acquainted online, organize an online meeting, and people can decide for themselves if they want to come to St. Petersburg and meet those specialists in person. So if you have any questions, please.
Liza, thank you very much. And my next question is as follows. I think today many speakers already mentioned that there are certain challenges related to migrating online for art residencies. And I would like to know, what do you believe is possible to transfer online and what cannot be transferred? So the major focus of art residencies is the proposal of a certain space and certain opportunities to the artists. So let's have a look at the prospects of online residencies. So what does an online residence gives to an artist as well as to an art organization? I think this was covered by Liza, for example, and it relates to communication between the artist and the local community. So I would like to know your opinion. What components can be transferred online? And is it actually possible to run an online residence? Who would like to answer that? Maybe Eliza, you would like to answer this question and share your opinion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I will answer it, but I can certainly share my opinion. That was really interesting, Lizaveta. Thank you very much. And I think what the programming that you're doing at the moment is really important. As Anastasia said, it kind of links the artist to St. Petersburg without actually being there in person. And I can think of a number of programs that are doing the same thing. For example, IASPIS in Sweden have a virtual residency program. And one thing that they found worked really well actually was, using things like Zoom and WhatsApp to show the residents their city. And the residents would, in exchange, show their city, which doesn't usually happen and can't happen through a physical residency. So this sort of weird thing was happening where it became a mutual and reciprocal exchange, which was really nice. So there are some positives there for sure. But for me, I touched on it earlier, I think the things that are missing at the moment are this kind of hosting element. So I guess it's like anything you do in person, conferences or otherwise, there's all these little discussions that take place, in the toilet or going to get a glass of water. You meet people and you talk and you start chatting. And it's all these tiny little things that are really hard to recreate. You can, have breakout sessions in Zoom. You can try and network people, but really nothing's that in-person exchange. But I do think there's a lot that can be done. We're all learning. It's a learning curve for the whole field. And I imagine there's a long way to go in that regard. Doing some sort of guides and, organising morning teas and afternoon teas and drinks and opportunities for these discussions to take place can form part of that.
Thank you, Eliza. And now I'd like to give the floor to some of our Russian colleagues who would like to answer the same question. Kristina, yes, please. The question that you raised is very similar with what I was talking previously. I think that the programs aimed to develop the mobility of the artists cannot be fully transferred online. However, I think that the current situation dictates the certain rule of conduct. And if we discuss an issue of organizing an online residence or wait till it will be possible to make an offline residence as we used to do it, I think that the first option would be a way to go. Of course, there are certain limitations, but still there are some advantages. And I think that the residencies were created to provide an opportunity to work for the artists. So the support that can be given to an artist online can also be used. So looking at this situation from this point of view, it's better to have online residencies rather than not to have anything. And maybe at a certain point, we will be able to combine both formats. We shall not wait till the moment when we can organize an in-person exchange. I think that Zoom is a very great tool. I'm always glad to see the participants and guests in Zoom. And I think that in terms of mood, it's quite difficult for everyone to stay in isolation. And if there are some tools that can help us to be together and to communicate, we shall use these opportunities. Thank you, Kristina. Liza, Adel, do you have an addition? Yes, I do have an addition. I think that in the view of no other options, it's great that we've got an online option. It's hard to imagine how we would deal with the situation if we won't have Zoom and all other instruments. This is a great enabling instrument. It helps to have the communication going. And I think that when we organize a festival or art residence, we can see that there are certain areas that are not well covered with us, like SMM part. So we don't have a proper connection with our audience through the online networks and instruments. So now we identify this gap and we are trying to close it. We think how to strengthen our position in terms of our presence online. Our organization is specialized on the social engagement projects, on public art. So in the conditions when we cannot physically communicate with people, it's quite hard to implement this project. And now it's quite a curious time when we need to work out the instruments for our cooperation. We need to understand what are the methods of our work with the audience. Everyone says that internet is something available and accessible to everyone, but actually it is not true. Not all people have proper technical devices and technical possibilities to connect. And I think it's fair for Russia as well as regions. And this means that we cannot communicate with certain people. However, I think that there is another challenge. And that is the perception of the online environment as something which is not serious. I think there is a skeptic attitude towards online initiatives and programs. So many people don't like Zoom. They believe that it does not work properly. So it's very difficult to break this barrier of skepticism related to the internet and internet-based initiatives. But I think that internet and social media is actually something which has a great potential, and we can work with it and we can create very interesting projects. But together with this, we need to break through this criticism. We need to attract people's attention. We need to involve them. We need to engage them. And we need to break the stereotypes that internet is something which is not serious, that it's not professional. So like many people would say, how can it be a serious exhibition, a project or an art residence if it is online? But as a matter of fact, we should think in a wider terms. We need to think how we can use these opportunities, how can we adapt to a current situation. What are the peculiar features of the online environment and internet? We need to take the opportunities. We need to play with these options. And I think we should try it now, and we shall continue this in future. Thank you, Lisa. I think you touched upon a very sensitive issue. First, about the accessibility of art residencies. And honestly, I frequently ask myself, are there virtual programs that can make the experience more accessible? On one hand, the answer is yes. So like the format of art residencies online can be accessible to those people who cannot travel. And there is a big amount of artists who cannot travel. And it's not related to the current limitations. Even if in the normal situation, they cannot come to Russia, for example, as I know there are a lot of restrictions related to visas and other issues. So sometimes it's difficult to bring artists from other countries into Russia due to the strict norms and regulations. Also, there really a lack of access to internet and to technical devices. And actually, it is a special skill to use the technical devices and represent your art online. And that's, again, another kind of a limitation. So I know many artists that can be brilliant offline, but they do not have the necessary skills to present their works online. And here we talk not only about purely the technical aspect, but rather about the skills that are needed to work online. Adel, would you like to add something to this issue about the migration of art residents online? Thank you. I would speak about a more theoretical aspect because I don't have any practical involvement in such projects, although I try to study them. So if we talk about the major resources, about what the residents can give to an artist, we can say the following: that is a time for work and a space for work. And we understand that both these resources, in case of online residents, can be present or may not be present, but they will not be thus full-fledged resources as it used to be in the traditional situation. Also, as Kristina said, there is an issue of cultural mobility. So sometimes we see that the art residence is an opportunity for an artist to travel. The organization of traveling is not that easy. It requires support. So art residencies is a great way to get acquainted with the Russian cultural artistic environment and to see various points and locations in the country. And we've got the art residencies in various locations in Russia, so it helps to see the country. Another aspect is that not all works can be transferred online. Not everything can be easily brought for an online discussion. So it depends on the format of work of an artist, whether the methodology means that there is a need for communication, whether it is something which is based on human participation. At the same time, the online residencies provide many other opportunities like financial support or greater support. So as Eliza mentioned, there is still an opportunity for the artists to work. Maybe it is a smaller scale and smaller fees, but nevertheless, they still can work. Also, it's a chance for an artist to implement the projects and improve their status, their reputation. And of course, a very important aspect is a professional communication. And I think that online residencies give these opportunities. We can see that there is a platform that you launched, and now there is a certain circle of experts and they communicate with one another, and we can see a great communication between them. So thus, there are certain benefits with online residencies. And also I want to highlight that residence is a very flexible format and they're evolving within the time. And we have all the time to look for the response to all the challenges and to think about life hacks, just as Liza described. I think like we cannot introduce each resident to the community, like first there can be a certain introduction Zoom session, and after that a certain offline communication can be organized. And we shall not close our eyes on the situation. We cannot continue working as we used to do. We need to rethink our activity. We need to answer the challenges of the time. I think this is the current situation.
Thank you, Adel. We have talked a little bit about the financing issue. I understand that it is very relative, important issue because arts residencies are one of the sources for material support, for financial support of artists, and it increases the dramatic pitch of this migration process when we cancel projects due to the pandemic reasons. So I agree with everything that Liza said. Online is considered quite frequently as not something serious, as something superficial perhaps. So unfortunately, it takes some time to accept this new online format, this new digital formats among specialists of arts, among curators and artists. Even though this process is significantly faster among artists and other art specialists in comparison with the area of financing or funding. So I think that we are faster in adapting, faster in accepting the new reality. The dynamic here is bigger, so I believe that our potential sponsors are much more slow in their decision making. And it is more complicated for them to take these decisions because, true, as Adele said, the format of residencies is very flexible, and we, specialists of arts residencies, can be flexible in our decisions, but we cannot expect this from our partners. What do you think about the perspectives in this regard? It would be interesting to listen about your experience. Maybe Eliza can tell a little bit about her experience abroad. Eliza, do you have any ideas, any opinion about how how funds and other organizations that provide financing adapt and how they react on this migrating online process? Is it accepted that now we migrate online, and do we have any promises here, any perspective? Because I believe that the majority of funds today plan their programs for the next year, and they have a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting discussion. The second survey that we're just about to send out really asks the sector funders to respond as well. So we'll have the artists, the arts residencies, and the sector funders, and we're hoping that that will shed a bit more light on this topic. Several arts councils have been very very much leading the way in this regard. So I can mention, for example, the Kone Foundation in Finland. They've put out some dedicated funding rounds for stay-at-home residencies, for example. And I think there's also one for virtual residencies to come or that has been announced. So there are several arts councils and funders leading the way. However, there is also a lot of catching up to do in other parts of the world. I think here in Australia, for example, everything that's international basically has been pushed back to next year, as you say. So that's why we're trying to get this data and really try to advocate. I think we've already spoken about virtual residencies. Yes, there can be some incredibly successful models, and I think there's only more to come as we improve our mechanisms for these exchanges to take place. But yes, I think we've got a long way to go as well.
Thank you, Eliza. And maybe our other participants can also share their experience. Kristina, I know that in chat there is a discussion underway about advantages of an online format, that we can simultaneously discuss different issues. So Kristina, could you share your experience about this process in Russia? How do Russian structures and Russian organizations and authority representatives adapt to the financing of this migrating process? Maybe I'm wrong if I say something like this, but to my mind, if we differ between public and private financing, then we can say that important to divide between public funding and private financing only for those who is looking for this funding or financing. Because it is clear when we ask for money and we go to city authority, city government, then there can be interesting situations, like one of the situations that we faced. Like, you come to a city government and asks for some funding to support young artists, young curators, to fuel a cultural landscape and cultural exchange for this money. And those governmental officials just keep smiling and keep asking, so that it is not enough. But they're not very impressed with our arguments. What I'd like to say is public funding is a very complicated issue, because those who give this money, they would like to see some tangible results. And if we're talking about artists, then this tangible results can be something that is difficult to achieve in a specific limited time. For example, there are some artists that can provide these tangible deliveries and then can provide it to some specific time stipulated by these governmental bodies. But other artists work according to their own schedule. They're more slow in their art process. So for this artist, it is difficult to have this governmental funding. In our photography museum, we decided to individualize each research. So if you go to our website, you can find projects dedicated to funding research. And that was the way for us to a bit find our way around in this situation, and to find financing for our artists, and simultaneously to show this tangible results, tangible deliverables. In terms of private funding, there are very nice examples, and I always tell about this. We have 3 arts residences in Yekaterinburg, the one from the photography museum, then another arts residency that is related to the branch of the Ural Biennale. And the third one was organized by Zhenya Chaika. She is the curator of this arts residency. And this residency is sponsored by the building company. This is a Yekaterinburg company. It is located in the office, the residency is located not far from the center, and it is a very successful example of private financing. So I believe that we can combine these 2 sources of financing, from public sources and from private sources. And to encourage this financing, we have to collaborate more with public organizations, with other partners, and we are very grateful to all of our partners. But of course, we all would like to see some stability, also in terms of specific budget, sound budget. But now, especially during the pandemic, it is difficult to have something like this, to have something, at least anything stable. But I really hope that our colleagues will work more on this. One of our residences was in Sochi, and unfortunately it was closed because its most important sponsor decided not to support it anymore. And I really hope that we won't have any examples like this in the future. And what we do with other colleagues in the Association of Arts Residences is that we try to find some ways out from this situation and to support our colleagues if they lose their financing. Because if we think that money is our most critical issue, the biggest problem, then we have to focus on this, and then the situation will be better. Thank you, Kristina. And Liza, maybe you can say something about your program, because you work with foreign funds as well. Maybe you can tell about the reaction of your partners and how flexible are they? I may say that we were lucky because we have an opportunity to postpone some residents from 2020 to the next year, 2021. We have to reschedule many residents. Normally, we receive 10 to 15 persons in our residency, but next year there will be fewer number of them because some of our residents still have to come. These are those that had to pursue residency in 2020. But we decided to invite several American artists to other residency in the former Soviet countries, so the number of residents will remain the same, but they will pursue their residency not in St. Petersburg, but in other partner residences. In terms of the projects themselves and our art project, a Prospect Festival, we decided to split it in two parts, and the part that should be offline in person was postponed to the next September. So it was important for us to organize diverse programs so that we can support our artists and at least to pay something to our Russian artists to help them, to support them in their work. However, in terms of residences, we would like to cover visa issuing process, then transportation for our American artists. We also cover lodging, but we don't cover meal or per diem expenditures. But actually, I can say that per diem expenditures are not so high, and all this information is public on the website. So I hope that those who would like to pursue this residency don't think too much about this money, because these are not. It is not some big amount of money. It is something that covers your living expenses. So to summarize, I'm really happy that our sponsors allow us to be flexible. They supported us in our flexibility. They demonstrated this flexibility themselves. And I know that there are several cultural institutions that are very interested to donate for different online projects. And I believe that they see it as a way to demonstrate their social responsibility. It's much safer today to support something online than to invest in some huge exhibition or huge festival where you have to bring people in person. Now it is not safe. Maybe in Russia, we don't think about this so much, but still our foreign colleagues think about this, and this is the most important. They keep this in mind, and for that reason, they probably prefer to donate to support online initiatives.
Lisa, thank you very much. In the beginning of the discussion, Adel said that their project, which was initially a platform that works online, also has some offline components, is another example. So maybe Adel, you'd like to give more details about it. You know, actually, we are in the most beneficial situation, especially due to those objectives that we place in front of us. So we run online meetings and discussions. Of course, we started the year with offline events, and many people are very pity that we cannot meet in person. But of course, it will depend on the situation, on the recent developments. And talking about the theory, we were discussing various ways of getting financing. And this is a principal moment because finance is important. And there are different options and different formats for residencies. For example, they can be organized within the municipal or regional or federal museums. And then there is a need to report to the state, but also there is another opportunity that is to work with various private enterprises. Another model is to receive grants or scholarships and then plan the activities planned on those grants that were awarded. Also, there are some art residencies that work purely on the enthusiasm of the artists. So those are different models in terms of the organization that can be used for art residencies. And of course, if we put a stake at only one source of financing, this can endanger our activity. And the current situation also required us to rethink our approach to budgeting and to think about sustainability. This means that we need to diversify our sources of funding. And I think that Lisa mentioned an important issue that is an interest to foreign funds, I think, and their interest to our country. So I think that's true, that those are funds that are ready to finance cooperation with Russia in various ways. And I think that it may sound paradoxical, but it's easier sometimes for Russian artists to get support from the foreign funds. Thank you, Adel, for your comment. And wrapping up our discussion, I would like to talk about the future. Nowadays, we're all trying to the best of our experience to imagine what we're going to do in 2021, how we're going to operate. I don't even want to use the word planning, because the recent half year showed that we shall not use this word at all. We cannot plan anything. It's so difficult to plan. So my question to all speakers: what do you think is the future of art residencies? And I have a quote which I liked from the research published by Artis. So there was a mentioning that at a certain point the pandemic will stop and we will come back to our normal way of life. We will restart our traveling. We will again have the offline residencies. And this will be the moment when art residencies will play an important role in restoring the cultural exchange and re-establishing of links between the countries. When I saw this quotation, it inspired me a lot. Maybe, Eliza, you can share your personal vision on future of art residencies, and what's the vision of Res Artis on this issue?
Well, I'm glad you appreciated the quote, because that came from me. So that is my vision, actually. I honestly believe that residencies are going to play a pivotal role in the re-emergence of, international exchange and intercultural understanding as well. I think we're so well placed to do this. It can start slow through, individual people-to-people exchange and build from there. But residencies are really the perfect vehicle to deliver on this topic. I think in terms of the future, I wish I had a crystal ball. It's so hard to tell, but I think there will be, to start with, a rise in local and regional exchange. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that we need to sort of start slow and build on from there. I hope that the visual and virtual content that we've been discussing tonight is incorporated into arts residency models in the future. But as I've been saying, to sort of sit alongside the in-person exchange in various ways. We've been talking about virtual exchange, but there's a lot of other things that can happen as well around, alumni connections, other residency activities that are not the actual exchange element. I actually think that the field, it's such a crucial time, and I feel like the field will change so much that the very definition of what constitutes an arts residency might change. I have to admit, Res Artis is somewhat traditional in this, in our definition at the moment. We're very much about in-person exchange because of the tremendous benefits of it. And, you know, we see that the history of arts residencies is steeped in this idea of residing in a place. It's the whole sort of lexical meaning of what an arts residency is. However, I think that will shift. I think it's becoming more and more popular for, you know, dancers in residence to be there, or, you know, conductor in residence. There's so many different types. It doesn't necessarily have to be accommodation, and I feel like that will become the new norm. And one more thing, I think that there will be a lot more experimentation with non-art sector partnerships. So, you know, we're talking about digital, but I also see a rise in the crossovers between art and science, for example. And again, I think that's a really exciting move for the field. I think it opens up a lot of new pathways, including different funding avenues.
Thank you very much, Eliza. Colleagues, what is your vision on this topic? Are there any positive scenarios from your point of view? Adel, maybe you can start commenting on that. Yes, thank you. I think that we need to understand that there are certain circumstances and peculiar features of art residencies in Russia. And actually, I've got a lot of concern when I think about the future of our colleagues, because many of art residencies are dependent on only one source. And we never know how long will this last. So this financial instability is a great challenge. We don't know who will survive by the end of the day. Those are very topical issues for all of us. And it's a pity to state that. Nevertheless, I believe that the future is something that we can make and that we can influence. So we need to think of what we can do in order to achieve positive outcome, something that will be beneficial for everyone. So it's great that we have so many conversations, but I think that we need to move from conversations to actions. Also, many residencies working on their own is currently in a very complicated situation, and probably their number will decrease. But still, I think that there is a local Russian trend, and that is the organization of the state-owned residencies. And we can see this trend merging in different parts of the countries. So there are clusters or certain workshops or youth organizations, and they obtain the name of art residencies and are quite active in the field of residencies. And so probably there might be a disbalance in terms of the residencies that are not actually matching the format which we expect from art residencies. But I hope that our efforts, the efforts of our association, will help to explain the right format for the art residencies to all organizations. Thank you. Liza, would you like to add something? Yes. I think this is a very interesting question. Of course, we all try to plan, but the circumstances can change very quickly. So we try to keep within the pace of time. I think it will be the same for quite a time, and we will have to work in the formats that we have now. And still, I hope that there is a solidarity within us, within our community, and we will become responsible for our actions. We need to think better about planning and implementation of projects. We should think not only about just a particular project, but rather think about forms that can provide the safety to the people, that will be safe for all the public. We do not want to impose any harm to any of them. And I look at the Russian situation and I feel a lot of sorrow about what I see, about what is the matter of concern to our foreign colleagues. And I think that we lack solidarity as of now. And we need to awake this feeling. I think that solidarity is something that we need. And I talk here not only about the artistic community and environment, but rather the overall human community, because we need to be all consolidated, to have support from various economic entities, authorities, and so on. Very often we face misunderstanding of what the art organizations are doing. There is a certain distrust towards the art centers. Actually, this is what I can see in Russia. So many believe that art centers is something provocative and something related to appetite. So donors do not want to give their funding to such organizations because they're afraid of the consequences. So I think that we shall change the situation. We shall bring up the feeling of solidarity. We shall switch from thinking that we are certain individuals doing our individual projects rather into a more public view. Then we will improve the situation. So if we don't believe that our actions change the society, then we will never change. Liza, thank you very much. I'm also very glad to have Kristina here online, as Kristina can represent an institution, but she is also a practicing curator and artist. Today we have Mariela Brandenberg and Miles Diaz, who participated in the SPAR, and then they also were our first online art residents. So they were the first who accepted our invitation. So this was our first trial, and we decided to call upon the close circle of the artists. So this was a kind of an adventure endeavor. And I know that Mariela and Miles also been to the residencies. And I have a question to Kristina, my last question. And I would like also Mariela and Miles to comment on that as well. My question is, will we see the change of attitude of artists to art residencies after the restrictions will be taken off? If so, then what will be these changes of an attitude?
Well, to keep it short, I would like to make a joke that if you don't have any plans, that nothing can go wrong. But to be serious, it's very difficult to exist in this paradigm if you are an institution. We don't plan a lot, but we dream a lot. And the more we talk, the more we can take these dreams to the next category of actual plans. So we are really active in discussing art residencies for curators for the Pushkinsky Museum. So I hope we really will have an opportunity to make these plans come true. But I cannot say that I have some opinion about this change of attitude. It is a very difficult issue because in terms of security, yes, the attitude will change. Artists are also people, and any conditions that are not safe for other people are also not safe for them. So in this regard, many things will change. And I would like to support Liza by saying that everything has already changed. So if we dream that this time will pass and we will forget about this and everything will be the same as it used to be, no, I think it won't be the same. This time will have some impact. I was a resident in the project Garage, and it was a wonderful experience. I love this project. And maybe I would like to engage in some online projects. Speaking from the point of view of an artist, I have no fears that we will work online in the future. But we have to face the situation. The reality is changing and it will be changed. So we have to think about this. Thank you. Thank you, Kristina. Mariela Mels, are you ready to participate during the previous 2 months? I was very glad to read your letters where you were talking about your experiences. So I think that it will be also very interesting for our participants to learn more about your experience.
Well, there's a big difference as far as we are concerned. The first memories that come up are the unexpected things, the things that happened unprogrammed, that were not curated. I can think of the museum night, for instance, that we happened to be present at, and we happened to organize something. It was completely unplanned as far as we were concerned, even as far as you were concerned. And it was great. It was something that really started something new in our practice as artists. Now, online, it is a bit of a love by post. That's how it feels, you know. You have your lover, but far away, and you see work you really like, but you have to first write down, or you could just put a like on it, but you have to write it down. It is arranged, and it is not as direct as an experience as a real artist in residence. And the residencies we did, actually, yes, they were different. Yes, we had to watch out, but in the end, yeah, we were in Guliago in Denmark, and also in Norway, but that was a very short residency and a tryout. But Guliago, we'd been there before, and I must say, it was largely the same kind of experience. It's a production facility, so it's different from Spar.
For ceramics.
It's a production facility for ceramics. They have huge kilns, and that's why we go there. But there's also a community of artists and ceramists that live pretty close together. And that was not really different. Maybe it should have been more different because it was not very safe. But people tried to make it safe for each other. And yeah, there was this ground tone of, well, we are here in borrowed time, really. So I'll be so glad if everything will be uncomplicated again and you can go somewhere and have little fears.
But we had to take precautions. We had to travel to Norway with an invitation, and it also said we would be in quarantine for 10 days. And it was very isolated place, and the people from the Nothagen place also took precautions. And half of our car was with our camping gear, because we thought until we actually are on the ferry, we might be stuck in Denmark for a couple of weeks, because we won't be able to enter Norway. When we came back from Norway to Denmark, we had to take a COVID test, because they didn't, in Guliago, they didn't more or less allow people without a COVID test. So, and in the first days, because in Denmark the system is, if it takes 3 days to have the results of the test, and in those 3 days we kept our distance. We didn't eat with the community. We didn't go in the studio, and we wear face masks while meeting the people. Actually, not everybody was doing this the same way we did, but yeah, we were very glad we could do it. Next in January, we have an exhibition with a Tasmanian artist from Australia. She's not able to even visit out of Tasmania. So months ago she did send her work, and yeah, the exhibition here in Holland, we are facing a second COVID wave. so it is postponed for 1 month, and somehow we will manage to do it. Katie is making a video to be in, somehow to be in the show. We are making a video as well, so we work around COVID somehow. It's not the same, but we still we try to do it.
It is great. Thank you so much for this comment. Really wonderful. It is always very interesting to hear about this pioneering experience. So I know that in Europe, multiple residences have this opportunity again to receive artists offline. Let me now thank everybody who participated in the discussion. Thank you so much for Eliza, and thank you for staying with us, even though I know, Eliza, that it's really, really late now in Australia. So thank you so much for finding time and for sharing your very valuable experience. Thank you very much to Adel, Kristina, and Lizaveta. I think that we have managed to talk about very relative and important issues and to discuss it from multiple points of view. It is very pleasant to realize that many of you stay positive and see great promise in the times to come. So I really hope that every limitations, every unpleasant situations that we have survived and we did it all together, every realization based on this experience can be perceived as opportunities. So let's make new opportunities out of these challenges. Let's create on the basis of these difficulties. And we're looking forward to positive messages from the future, from the next year. I hope the next year will bring more opportunities than limitations. Thank you once again. Thank you very much for everybody who was with us. Thank you very much to our partners. And I would also like to thank the team of St. Petersburg Art Residency, Nazar and Elizaveta. They assisted us in our project, and also Nazar was our technical specialist. So he assisted us and made this meeting and discussion possible. Thank you also so much to our interpreters, Anastasia and Antonina. I think it would be impossible to organize this cross-cultural communication without their interpretation skills. I wish you to have a nice day or good night. And thank you once again for joining us. Bye.